Thank you guys for being here. I know that this is obviously a hard topic to still talk about, and I'm sure it will be for a long time. But I know that this conversation will help a lot of people. So I really appreciate you guys sitting down and doing this. So we'll just kind of start out a little easier with, I know you guys are both obviously very familiar with our Kicking the Stigma initiative and campaign that is very important to our family and to the Horseshoe. Why do you feel that it's so important to continue that kind of conversation and really use our platform and your guys' platform to let people know that it's okay to not be okay all the time?
Obviously, going through what we've gone through, and the Colts organization has been such a spearheaded, movement organization in this topic. And ultimately, I think what we've all finalized and realized is that talking about it makes it more normal. It makes it easier to live day to day, and it helps other people. And so I think that using the platform that we have with professional sports to accelerate, what we want to talk about, and it's okay to not be okay. I think ultimately we never thought it was going to happen to us, or we never thought we'd have a personal connection to it. But it just goes to show you that it affects everybody.
One thing I'm proud of us that we've been doing is doing the work. So we've seen professionals, seen a couple counselors, and one of the things we learned from them was that mental health has very physical effects. So especially when you go through something traumatic, you go through a shock phase, and it's literally, I can remember just being in a fog. And your body senses that and it protects you from it. But then there's this period afterwards, like all the months, years, maybe even after, of what they call like a disorganizational phase. And so we learned that in that phase, 60% of your energy goes towards protecting yourself. It not necessarily shuts down, but your body knows that it's in trouble, your mind, your body. And so 60% of that goes to preserving and saving yourself ultimately. So that gives you 40% to do whatever's left. So that's 40% to give to your spouse, to give to your job, to give to your family. And so I don't think anyone's ever put it into such a real way. But when you think about that, especially in a job that's so physically demanding, it could be dangerous. So with the mental health, with anything traumatic that you go through, it's critical that you acknowledge it and take that time to reset so that you protect yourself from something as severe as injury. Because if your mind is not right, there's no way that you can produce the level that you're supposed to until that is corrected.
Yeah, that's such an important way to look at it, and I've never heard that.
Yeah, we
had presented in that way, and that had to help a lot. Just in even what you had to have been feeling, and you to be able to put it almost into words and something tangible had been so helpful. And as we talk about platforms and the Colts, and just you even individually as people have an influence on people, and you are in the spotlight. And that's part of what comes along with this role. But when something like this happens, it can be even that much more difficult as you celebrate the highs, but this is a way that people, were able to be with you in the lows. And so, I think a lot of people followed your story and connected with it, from finding out you were pregnant and then finding out that it was a baby girl, and then following you all the way to when you sadly had to say goodbye to Mary Kate way too soon. What did you guys learn through that process? What did you guys learn about each other, and what did you learn about, yourselves as individuals?
We were having this conversation the other day. I told her, I was like, it's in the moment when you find the news out, you have no choice. Like you have to act, you have to do these things because life is happening. Life has changed in the second, right? And so I told her the hardest part is the days come after that, the months after that, because you wake up every day and you have to choose how you're going to live that day. We could be sad from now until the end of eternity, and our hearts will never be complete without her. But I think the most glaring thing is the people that we've been able to help. We never shared our story in hopes that it would become nationwide, and we didn't even know at the time. We thought we were the only ones that have ever gone through this, right? Like there's the chance of this ever happening to us statistically was 1%. How could we be a statistic that's so small? And then we realized that maybe there's a bigger purpose, and that we helped a lot of people who also could never talk about this. And so using our platform, I think has really helped a lot of people say, you know what, like we're here too. It happened to us, and you never forget. And you just learn every day and it tests your marriage. I mean, it's tested our marriage, and I think it's ultimately made us stronger because we've experienced something that nobody else has really gone through that, we're really close with. And so, we heard a statistic one time that was 80% of marriages fail if after death of a child. And so, we're fighting every day not to be that statistic. And I think it's ultimately comes because we have passion for each other, passion for love, and we try to help each other each and every day get through it, and we certainly grieve differently, men and women, and our personalities are different, but at the end of the day, we choose each other and we choose to talk about it, which makes it a lot easier to deal with every day.
I think he said it best too. 1 minute you're on the highest of highs, like everything changes the moment you find out that you're pregnant, and for both of us. And so it's a high like you've never felt, and you have all these expectations, everything that floods in, all the joy and the things that you picture for their life here. And then overnight, you hear there's no heartbeat and you can't even comprehend it. And like I said, you're living your life how you always have, and then in an instant, and one word, one sentence changes your entire life. I mean, I physically felt changed from the inside out, and I'll never forget laying in that hospital bed and the fear and isolation. Your first thought, especially as a woman, is shame. What did I do wrong? Did I cause this? And then your second thought is, especially if you haven't dealt, you don't know anyone who's gone through this, is the isolation. You feel that you're the only one in the world that this has happened to. And unfortunately at our age too, we're surrounded by people having babies, and it's beautiful. Like I even have 2 sisters who are pregnant with me, and they're continuing on with theirs. So it's a flood of all these things changing overnight, and what you thought was gonna happen, this beautiful life that you were gonna have together as a family, and it's ripped from underneath you. And it's just processing all of the emotions that come with them, and they're very overwhelming. And so on top of just the heartbreak and the grief of losing them, it's trying to work through, again, all of these negative and scary emotions that come with it.
Yeah, and I think, when you look back on that time, obviously you both can, still feel it, it's still fresh. And I think that, this moment or moments on Instagram or social media or even your press conference, you guys have been so willing to be so raw and vulnerable. And it sounds like part of that almost wasn't even something you thought about. It was just something that came naturally. It's what you felt like you had to do almost just to get through what you were experiencing. So what would you, I guess, say to someone that's looking for advice on how to handle a situation like this with someone that they love?
Yeah, so we were so open with our journey in public, especially with opening up our gender reveal and sharing that on Hard Knocks. So when you talk about being vulnerable, I don't think at the time that's not what we were thinking about. It didn't even occur to me. What we were thinking about was, again, I mentioned those feelings of shame, and I remember feeling so embarrassed. And I remember reading that statistic. This happens to only 1% of people, especially this far along. And so I just was so embarrassed that I wanted to have the conversation one time. I didn't think at the time that I'd be able to talk about it. So in that instant, after we had gone through a very traumatic delivery in itself too, this was actually a couple days before a very critical game too. I mean, one of your veteran players and starting players is out, and it's a critical point of the season. The community is concerned, and they're anxious, they want to know, and they didn't have answers. So we actually did start to receive messages too when the news broke that he was not practicing, that he was out for personal reasons. I wasn't quite ready to share the details of it, but I wanted to open up a little bit so that people could understand enough to know that we were not okay and that we needed a little bit of space. So I remember before we even opened up with the original post about what all had happened, I had shared a little poem that kind of hinted at what had happened, but I couldn't quite find my words because, again, the poem and that original post was all while I was laying in that hospital bed with him next to me. And so the long-winded way was just vulnerability or being open and wanting to share wasn't our purpose at first. It was, we couldn't bear to have that conversation more than one time. And it was so open, we were so excited to share our pregnancy, I thought it was critical that people knew too about this, because social media, again, it's a wonderful thing, but it's always the highlight reel of everyone's life. And I just remember thinking, we are human, and I need people to understand that we're not okay, and that this is happening to us. From there, we had hundreds and hundreds of messages, he and I both, from people in our boat, and it was a lifeline. It was overwhelming, but I had mentioned earlier, we felt so alone. Like, we were the only ones who had gone through this. So then you get these courageous people sharing their story of loss, and they're right there with you, they're further along. And it's what I needed to survive this, and I will forever be grateful for that. You don't hear about this a lot, and so for him to be in the position that he's in and to go through this, I was scared to death of what was going to happen when the news broke. And then the way that the Colts community came through for us, and the sweet messages, and the posts, and let's win this for 78 and things like that. I can't even tell you what that means, and that I will remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Ryan said it had been one of the first times you were this vulnerable and open. I think, unfortunately, a part of the stigma piece too with athletes is, mentally push through the pain, like whatever pain that is, whether that be emotional, physical. So is there a moment, being both athletes where you felt like, it is okay to not be able to push past this?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. I was dreading having to walk into the building after I came back. You just don't know. You left the building this guy and you came back a different person. And so, how do you look into somebody's face, when you're supposed to be pregnant together, and like your whole life has changed. And so, like she said, we met this counselor, and she broke things down in a way that I've never heard before. And she said, we all are subject to grief. If you ask a room of people who has lost a grandparent, who has lost a parent, somebody you love, right? Everybody would stand up. And what you don't see every single day on social media is you see the happiness. He's like, our whole life, and as professional athletes, we've gone through injuries, and we're taught how to rehab and to do all these things, but there's a side of it that you don't see, and that's the pain of, losing a child like we have, or, everybody's subject to pain in some degree. It's just not as talked about from the mental side, but how can that be? We're a society that will lose people that we love. It's 100% guarantee. And so I think for us, it was never a day for me that I felt like, I need to push through this, because I just couldn't. It was a mental, if my knee hurts, I know how to push through that. If my ankle hurts, I know how to push through that. It just takes time. I mean, you have to feel every emotion that comes with it, the highs, the lows. And I remember thinking at one point, we were laughing a couple weeks after we lost her, and I was like, how can I be happy right now? Like, I shouldn't be happy, right? But at the end of the day, like, it's life. Like, there are gonna be some ups, there's gonna be downs, and you have to keep rolling with the punches. And I think that's why I attribute so much of like the good days versus the bad is just leaning on her and having somebody like your wife who's so supportive, to push through, because just like an athlete, you're not, you can't just compete by yourself.
That's a good point. A lot of people, in a marriage, you tend to have someone has bad times and the other one lifts them up. But this is a moment where you're both in it. There is no one to be the rock. How did you guys handle that?
It's been a roller coaster for us. So it has brought us closer in ways that I can't even describe, and strengthen our marriage. And again, in ways I can't describe, but there was trial and error. And so, I remember a couple weeks after, I'm very emotional. I can't carry it inward, I have to express it. And so I was crying all the time, and that isn't Ryan. And so to me, I challenged him, and I was like, do you not care as much as I do? And why aren't you crying like I'm crying? Which is incorrect. And through that, we've learned, and we've come to the understanding that we are very different people. It's what makes us so successful, but it's important to realize, especially in these times, that I need to respect the way that he grieves, and it's gonna look nothing like the way that I do. There's so many exercises and things that we've gone through to learn what each other needs in this, but you go through those first couple days, even weeks, and you don't leave each other's side, but then you realize it's important to have alone time and to let the other go through their thoughts and feelings by themselves and express it however they want to in order to survive this. Grief is not linear. It is up and down, and it is unique to each individual. And so it's important to know that if you're going to survive it with a partner, that it's not going to look the same, and you have to honor and respect that.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that you guys were able to do that together and realize that together. Well, and speaking of that, so as everyone handles emotions differently, everyone handles this topic differently, what have you guys have found that's helped you in your mental health toolkit?
For me, I feel like fishing for me is just the most peaceful thing. It's how I like, if I can get 30 minutes of that a day, it's 30 minutes where I'm in my own thoughts. I'm just zenned out. Sometimes I'll think about my daughter, I'll talk to her, sometimes I don't think about it at all. But it's my escape, having a healthy escape from, whatever mental illness or whatever, fear you're having, I think is insanely important. And it probably needs to be just you, something that's just for you. You know what I mean? And I know she's that way too.
For me, it's, I feared it for a long time at the start of this, but being in stillness is like praying, meditation, sitting still and breaking away, like distancing myself from technology. By nature, we just are programmed to go 1,000 miles per hour. So it's intentionally taking breaks and doing something. Both of us actually got into journaling. We started writing letters to our daughter when it first started, just things we wanted to say. And we both do that pretty consistently now. And it's just such a way to express whatever it is you're feeling, but to keep it to yourself too, if you want to. And so I find us big journalers now, which is funny because we were never those people before. It's all healing, whatever it is. That's the whole point of it, is the time by yourself, allowing whatever it is to just be and honoring that. So all the feelings you have, whether that's translating them onto paper or being with your thoughts, but you go through a lot and you have to validate every single one of those if you want to make it to the other side of this.
We are so honored to have been able to help you guys donate to some of these great organizations that have helped you guys through this. And I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk about some of the ones that you didn't even know about, obviously, not having gone through something like this. I never knew about a lot of the organizations that you've been shining a light on, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about some of your ones that really, truly helped you through your grieving process. And, I'm sure a lot of those things are still helping you now.
I just want to start off by saying thank you guys for doing that. You guys have helped us change so many lives and reach so many more people, because what these organizations are doing is very powerful, but they're small. And so this donation has gone so far for every single one of them. So we're just so grateful for you guys doing that for us.
We just, like everybody, I think, wanted to help you in any way that it made sense to you guys, and trying to think of, how to walk you guys through this process and leaving her name stamped everywhere we possibly can is, what I would imagine I would want too. And so I know that them being donated in her name, that will be stamped on all those organizations forever. And each person who receives something that is from those donations will know her name and know her story. And we're just honored to be a part of helping you guys do that.
Yeah, it was truly like amazing. We're at the hospital, and your whole world upside down. You're getting calls from everybody, texts from everybody, and at the same time, you're wondering how this happened, why is this happening. But anyways, we left the hospital. When you leave there, they do, we asked to do like some handprints, some footprints, which it's hard. You got it.
So the cruelest thing of all is, especially with how far along we are, we had to go through the labor and delivery part of it, and then you're going home with empty arms. And so what this hospital does, so we learned about these organizations through the hospital, but their mission is that lost moms don't go home empty-handed. And so we were given a box of mementos, and they were filled with little outfits because our daughter was so small. She wouldn't fit in baby-sized clothing, so they have these custom-made clothing so that we could bury her in them in something nice and girly. And then there's it's a box full of books on what to do next, little keepsakes with her name on it. They gave, Mary Kate and I matching bracelets. So they made one for her, one for me. And so that just honestly, again, there's no words for it. It's so painful, but to have something physical to bring home with you because you don't have your child to take home with you is so important. And every mom, every lost mom in the world, and every lost parent in the world should have this. When you lose your child, you don't want anyone to forget about them, least of all yourselves, and you want them to be real. And so these are things that you can take home with you and place wherever, or give to people so that they know that your child was real, and that they were here, and that we won't ever forget them. Not that you ever could, especially as parents. And one of our favorite things is this organization. They're called Molly Bears. And they give you a stuffed animal, and they are made to be the same weight as your child. And it's something to hold on to in those however long it is you need to hold on to it. And that's critical. It's going to sound wild for, adults to hold on to stuffed animals, but you need it. Unless you've been in there, you can't really understand that, but something to hold on to, especially in those first couple weeks, is critical. And so this organization, they let you customize them. We always visualized our daughter in those giant headbands. And so we were able to pick out those for her to have, and the butterflies. And so it's important work, and we need to shed light on them because, again, they're very powerful. They're small but mighty, and so every lost parent deserves something like this. And that's going to be our mission, is just ensuring that we can expand this reach, or their reach, as much as possible, because it saved us, and we think about it all the time. And I just want everyone else to have what we had.
And I think those organizations and really a lot of what Kicking the Stigma is and a lot of what we're talking about, we're not just here for us, we're here for others. And I think that you guys have found this way of healing through being there for others, and the way that these organizations were there for you. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. You have an event coming up that is specific. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Mother's Day is different, probably always will be. It's painful. It's also right before her due date. And so, ironically, we had someone reach out for us from Kendra Scott, the general manager. It was kind of her brainchild and asked us to host it. And then from there, she really let us take the reins on it. It's to give all of these women, and it's not just loss, it's infertility. It's all of those struggling in this day that might be very painful, to give them a little bit of something to look forward to. And so it's supposed to be a day off. So come in, shop, drink some wine. There'll be a salon there, get pampered, and connect with those who are standing in your shoes, or know the pain that you feel to some extent. And so that's what we want to create. That's what saved us, is community in this, and that's what we again want to try and expand and do as much as we can, is just to make others feel like they are not alone in this, because they aren't.
That's all I have. You guys, thank you guys so much for doing this.
Thank you.
I know it's hard each time, to bring it back up, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate it and how much I know people will appreciate it watching it. I hope you know that, this is life-changing work. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you
bringing it back up.
for opening this up and letting us tell this and talk about this, because it's important. It's still not where it needs to be. So we just thank you guys so much.